First and foremost, I would like to thank everyone for coming out tonight. This is our second meeting that we're having inside the city in regards to our Harrisburg Codes Department. We thought this would be a good initiative from City Council to take these meetings out in the community, because as we go around and as everyone knows, the two biggest issues inside the city of Harrisburg is number one being crime, and the second one being blight. So this venue provides a good opportunity for you to get some information about what goes on within our codes department, frequently asked questions about processes, procedures, understanding the different areas that our codes departments take care of, and if there's other issues where other departments kind of step in and take care of those issues as well. One of the most important things that I'm going to say at the beginning that I said at the end of yesterday's meeting is these meetings are important because first thing is bring people together. A lot of times we don't know our neighbors or who's around us. So one thing I would encourage everyone to do before you leave is to introduce yourself to someone that you don't know here, because what we have here this represents a community, and through community engagement and through community advocacy, that's when government is the strongest, because you're able to come together as a unit and advocate for things that are important to you. And because you're here tonight, it shows that code enforcement is important to you. So I use this as your opportunity to get to know your neighbors, and you'll start to realize that a lot of the issues you guys share is common, and then through that comes collective conversation, and through that comes advocacy and overall solutions. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce, we have my fellow council member here. If people who don't know me, I'm Cornelius Johnson. I'm the chair for public safety, so that includes fire, police, and codes, and also a little bit of emergency services. I have Councilman Westburn Majors. He is the chair of public works. We have one of our assistant city clerks, Chardin. She runs the operations behind the scenes. We have a couple former council members inside the room, and so I'm sorry, there go Dave blended in. We have Council Member Dave Matson. He's our newest council member. He's our Community Economic Development chair. So we're here to serve you in any capacity as possible. But without further ado, the first person I'm going to introduce is one of our former council members, but she's also in the capacity of working for the city within our lead program. In case you guys don't know, the city is a recipient of a $3.3 or $3.2 million grant from the federal government for lead abatement. This is a very, very, very important issue within the side of our community, because a lot of our homes are affected by lead paint, and through lead paint, many children under the age of 6 years old are affected. So this is a perfect time to kind of share some of that information that may be important to you guys, and then you guys can kind of get some, if it applies to you or if you know someone in your neighborhood who it applies to, they can get the application, fill it out, and see if they qualify to get more homes abated inside the city. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Susan Brown Wilson. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to try to go through this quickly because I heard that the codes have a lot to cover. So, but I think it's important for everyone to understand what the lead program is about. And I'm going to correct Cornelius a little bit in terms of what the amount of money we actually receive from the federal government. The city received a grant for $3.7 million. And of that $3.7 million, the city of Harrisburg will be spending up to 2.9 of that. The difference of that is in administrative costs. First off, I want to introduce the team that actually helps run it. We have Ed Colton, who actually happens to be our project construction manager. We have 2 rehab specialists, which are Ray Burnett and Dave Olson. And then we also have I'm missing somebody. Romulus Brown, but he's really not with lead. He deals with our Cdbg Funding, which is another program that the city has, and they actually received about $1.8 million, and it's called Community Development Block Grant money that really deals with other things throughout the city. But in any case, dealing with the lead program, back in about 1978, the government decided that we would no longer be using lead in paint. And so about the late I'd say early to mid 80s, They decided that this program would be worthwhile because 90% of the homes across the United States have lead in them, 90% of that. So in looking at it, they said, well, we need to really do something about it. So of course they went through the various communities and they then decided to award the actual programs to the various cities. So about 2 to 3 years ago, 2015 to be exact, Harrisburg was the recipient of it. I came in as the actual coordinator and program person dealing with the logistics, the outreach, the intake. And so let me describe a little bit more about what that actually does. First off, you have to at least live in the city of Harrisburg. So that's one of the things you must do. You must have a child that's under 6 years of age that either visits your home or lives with you. And the catch to that is that they only have to be there 60 hours annually, which is no time. Because what we find is that most people, grandparents, nieces, and nephews, come and visit your home. So they don't have to live with you. They just have to visit your home 60 hours a year. Along with that, you have to provide me your income. And in that income, you must meet the guidelines as it's stated by the federal government. It says if you are one person, you cannot make more than $40,000 a year. If there are 2 people in your home, you can't make more than 46. If there are 3 people, you can't make more than 52. And it goes all the way up to 7 people. And with that, when I do the actual intake, I actually ask you for your 2016 taxes. You cannot be back more than 2 years on your taxes, which means you can not have paid your 2017 and your 2016. If you are behind on 2015, you must bring your taxes current in order to enter into this program. You must provide me, if in fact you are working, you must give me 3 current pay stubs along with those taxes. And so anyone else that's in your home, let's just say you have someone that's retired and someone that's working, that retiree will need to give me their retirement information, along with the person giving me the 3 paychecks. And so it's pretty simple if you meet these guidelines based on that. You can also be pregnant in the home, and I don't think anybody in here is having any more kids, but if you are pregnant, we cater to those as well. It is important to know we're in the building, and I didn't mention this last night, but we happen to have a collaboration with Hamilton Health Center where the children can come here and get tested. So they get tested. If you are a Hamilton Health Center client, your testing is Monday, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays through that program. And then, of course, on Wednesdays, they do it for free for everyone else in the city from 1 until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. If, in fact, we find that your child does have lead, those applications will be taken out and brought to the top because it's important that we address those homes where there are children actually living. I got a little cheat sheet tonight. I just want to make sure I hit all the things. But I think that's basically the program itself. And it really doesn't take that long. If you have all the information that I'll need from you, in addition to the application and your pay information, I will need your Pennsylvania driver's license. If you give me your income tax information, I would ask that you would redact the first 5 numbers off of your 2016 taxes. I don't need to know that. Federal government identifies you by your last 4. All of this stuff is loaded into a database that HUD monitors. I will also need to have your current utility bills, your gas, your electric, and your water bill. I pull your storage. I'll pull the actual taxes to your house. I will pull your refuse. And if I find that the refuse is too far behind, I will let you know that 50% or more of that bill must be paid before you come into the program. And it takes all of about 5 or 10 minutes to gather, if you gather that information, and it's pretty simple. It's absolutely free. It costs you nothing to fill the application out. It's a matter of getting all the information and people making sure that they dot the I's and cross the T's. And then, of course, from that point forward, it comes into the system. Ed does the review in terms of going out because every one of these gentlemen that I named are certified in lead risk assessment. So when they evaluate it, they know what they're looking at. And there's a risk assessor that actually comes out to your property to determine whether or not you have lead. If you have lead in your home, they will determine whether or not they are going to replace the windows or whether they are going to do what's called interim control. There's a difference. If it's interim control, that's merely painting. If I have to replace your windows, that is called abatement. And in the instance where there is an abatement that's taking place in the home, we will then ask you to leave your home, and we pay to put you up at a local hotel. That is paid for through this grant. And so usually it's about a 10-day window that you're normally out of your homes. And when you're out of your homes, then of course they come and monitor to make sure the work is being done, and they follow up, and then I come back because I'll set up all the hotel reservations. I also give those individuals who are out of their homes, so we give you a stipend to compensate you so that we know that you can go out and eat because you'll be somewhat inconvenienced. So we want to make sure that you're covered. And so that's about it in a nutshell. Are there any questions? I'm the contact. My number is 717-255-6412. Our application is on the city's website under Economic Development, the drop-down tab under Building and Housing, and you click on lead hazard control. And you can fill the application out online, and you can fax it back to me. That number is 255-6421. It's just the opposite of my phone number, coincidentally. And so I would just encourage everyone, if you know people or you have family members or friends, encourage them to get into the program. Right now, I guess we've processed probably 200 applications, of which I'd say about 161 of those are right now in our pipeline. And we've got a pretty good crew, and as a team, we go out, and I come out to people's homes even late at night. It's not something that I sit in the office and do all day. Usually I go to someone's home and I help them fill out the paperwork if they don't understand something. I come back and pick up your information. It's not one of those things where we make you come downtown because it's somewhat inconvenient because of the lack of parking. So rather than have you get a $35 ticket, I'll come to your home because there are sometimes people don't get off till late in the evening, 4 or 5 o'clock. So I do home visits to pick the information up to make it a little bit more accessible for people. Any questions? There's applications up here if you know someone. There's a flyer and there's information. Thank you.
All right, so we're going to get started with the agenda. Who I'm going to bring up next is our code administrator, David Patton. He's been in this role for many years, so he'll go over a brief introduction of some of our new code enforcement officers. It's been the most code enforcement officers that the city has had for a very, very long time. So we wanted you to get to know some of the new faces that you'll be seeing around the city. And then he'll go over a little bit of the process and other frequently asked questions that come up through filing a code complaint. So without further ado, I present to you Dave Patton, our code administrator.
Good evening, everyone, again, and thank you for coming out. I think our goal for this evening, at least is my hope for this evening, that when you leave here tonight, you'll have a little bit of a better understanding on precisely what we do, or at least have some sort of an idea. It is kind of a dynamic that is widely misunderstood on how we try to achieve compliance, all the challenges that we go through. I think everyone has an agenda. What I'm going to try and do is stick it closely as I can to the agenda. With some, just clarification information on several different items, as we march through everything. If last night's any indicator, there's probably going to be a lot of questions, and that's why I want to make sure we have ample time and time we have here tonight, so that I can answer your questions the best I can. We still have some bad landlords, but we're able to get ahead of it. Once we know about these, we're able to address them with the tools that we have. And I think it's good to try to reflect on things, because a lot of us haven't been around and recall things of what happened 20 years ago. And I think it's good to think back, because it's good to think back as to what it was, to understand where we are, to see where we're going. It's kind of an old proverb I just made up. But in that time, we've had nearly 1,000 properties demolished. Now, I'm not a big fan of demolition, quite frankly, because actually that's kind of a last resort. Seeing a lot of the housing stock destroyed. I know it's a necessary evil, trying to address a lot of public safety concerns, but it's a little disheartening watching a lot of the architecture and And, you know, a lot of the buildings that are coming down, just a vacant lot, and it was most recently, you know, like on Hummel Street, that was a little sensitive there because that's where my grandfather grew up. And then we took some down on Nectarine Street, that's where my grandmother grew up. So it was a little painful, you know, watching a lot of the demolitions, you know, just take place. I mean, it's just, it's not a really great thing, but I understand it's something we need to do. Now, as far as what we do, we can break this down to like two categories. We deal with the property maintenance code. I mean, that's, as property maintenance, as it implies, it deals with property maintenance. And then we deal with the building permits. Now, each of the building permits, whenever the building permits, we are required by law to inspect building permits. We're what's called an opt-in municipality, meaning that we have elected to enforce the statewide building code. And with that, you know, all the inspectors have to go through rigorous training each and every year, testing, certifications, just so they can look at any of these jobs and do the inspections. In fact, the very building that you're in, anything that occurs here, we have to be here to inspect this until it's in. And with that, the benefit of that is the revenues. We get a substantial amount of revenues from the building permits. So, you know, when you think about that, the revenues that come in actually support the property maintenance. If we don't do the building inspections, the property maintenance barely exists. So it's important. I just wanted to stress that because I do bring that up, you know, on occasion, because a lot of people think that property maintenance is all we do, when in fact the building permit is equally. We address the property maintenance as our duty to the community service, and we have to address the building permits in the interest of community service, also by state law. Now, I'll set aside some of the building permit aspects for a time and focus on the property maintenance, because I know that's pretty much what's in a lot of people's minds. Now, what I want to do is talk about the property management and what we do, but also I want to talk about what we don't do. I think that's equally important, because we get a variety of complaints. We're sort of like the repository. We get complaints for everything: noise, police, or drugs, prostitution, tenant-landlord complaints of a civil action if somebody doesn't pay get their deposit back. I mean, just a complete variety of things. We actually get a lot of complaints from other cities. Recently, we got one from Mahanoy City. We got one from Philly, Pittsburgh, and all the surrounding townships, because they think that, you know, since we're the city of Harrisburg, we have jurisdiction statewide. And it's up to me to kind of redirect everything to where it goes. But in terms of the property maintenance, I'll just take you through a little bit about what it is that we do relative to that. First of all, it's with the structures. When you've driven here today, you see buildings, you see structures everywhere. That's pretty much everything with that structure that we handle. Anything with porches or any kind of property maintenance that's relative to that particular structure, we will deal with. Whether it's falling down porch or chipped and peeling paint or anything of that structural nature is up to us to deal with through code violations. The outside gets kind of a little bit tricky. Now, really, we only deal with high grass and weeds and sanitation issues. We'll deal with like sidewalk issues, but we do not deal with bushes or trees. And trees has always been a hot topic. And we get a lot of complaints on trees. Trees are not something that we're proficient at. We don't have an expertise with trees. That's more of a civil action. If someone has branches growing into their particular space, they have every right to cut the branches or whatever it may be. But trees, bushes, we don't deal with. We have, I don't know if anyone has filed property maintenance complaints before, but on the property maintenance is a document on the front of it that says what we do not enforce. And I think I've kind of hit on some of the most prevalent ones that we get relative to someone's not putting their trash cans out. Illegal dumping. Illegal dumping is a police matter. Our property maintenance code is property specific, meaning that anything on that property is what we address, and that is for the property owner. Anything that someone is doing harm to another person becomes a police matter. Okay. But basically, with, with the exterior portions of the property, we are very limited. The condemned properties, I know that's something that's in a lot of people's minds. Condemned properties we deal with on a pretty routine basis. And our condemned properties pretty much fall into one of a few categories. They're deceased, they're indigent, they're corporations that don't exist, out of state and out of country. So our summary citations have little traction going across state lines. We actually have owners in Australia now. I have Australia, I have Indonesia, I have Switzerland, I have London, I have Dominican Republic, Mexico, along with people throughout the United States. What happens is the tax sales, people go into the repository and they'll buy a property for maybe $500. And then what they do after that is they just put it on the internet and they sell it on Craigslist. They sell it on any kind of real estate site, eBay. We've actually tracked it. And we have to issue new condemnation orders for every time they change ownership. And before the ink is dry, it's already changed ownership again. It's already being auctioned off again. So we have little recourse to do anything with properties that are that are out of state or out of country, and they end up falling into our hands for demolition. I know there's some great things going on in Allison Hill, and have been, with everything going on Mulberry Street. And a lot of the demolitions that we have done over the course of the last 2 years, we've actually done 24 demolitions over the past 2 years in Allison Hill. It's about a little over $250,000 that we've done. So we are making some success. I've worked through a lot of other municipalities throughout the state, and I've actually worked on some programs and some other initiatives in various other states in the Midwest, even as far as California. So I have that little bit of perspective that I can bring back to Harrisburg, so I can craft certain ordinances or anything that'll suit our particular environment. And that's been enormously beneficial. A lot of times I will craft something and bring it to City Council, just based on that perspective and based on my knowledge of what we need or what the needs are within our community. Now, I think everybody here knows pretty much how to file a complaint. Yes? Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I'm not going to interrupt you, but what we're going to do is, because I think once you ask your questions, it's going to start off a whole bunch of questions, but once we start questions, we're going to have people lined up right here. So Dave's going to, we're going to allow for a whole bunch of questions. I just want him to be able to get through what he has to get through, then we can open up the floor for open forum. I'm sorry about that.
Anyway, we were talking about the blighted buildings, and we do take complaints on the blighted buildings. Most oftentimes we've already done citations, we've already done some legal action on those. And again, as I was saying, a lot of our stuff doesn't go across state lines because it's summary in nature, but what happens is, years ago I've got permission to do this through the Deputy District Attorney's Office. When we do have a particular collapse or situation, I will file a misdemeanor on them and put them in what's called the National Crime Information Computer. Now, it pops up in a warrant regardless of where they're at, in the nation. We're not going to extradite because you really can't extradite for anything like that, but it does impact their life in such a way that if they go for any type of a job application or anything, it is going to pop up on the job application. I have had some luck, bringing individuals back. They've actually come back trying to clear the record. In addition to misdemeanors, we do what's called a housing code avoidance. That's a legislation that I crafted back in, I guess, probably the late 90s with Senator Piccola, where if you get 4 guilty verdicts, then it goes to misdemeanor. It has since been amended, so if you get 2 guilty verdicts, the third one goes to misdemeanor. And that's 2 years and $5,000. So that does have a lot of weight in trying to encourage someone to do what they need to do. In terms of the fines, we do have a housing court, and it's working famously. We've had this for probably about, maybe 2-3 years now. It's working very well, but there's something that I need to clear up in terms of the fines. People think high fines, issue high fines. The DJ issues the fines. Now, they go upon our recommendations. It's anywhere from $50 to $1,000. There's always this misbelief that we do get $1,000 judgments. We get them quite frequently, but what happens is once we get the judgment, there's this misbelief that they think, okay, well, there's a fine, they pick out their checkbook and pay it. No, they don't. They just get on payment plans. And that's where things kind of take a kind of a strange, circuitous route. They get on payment plans. There's so many avenues and challenges that we have to face trying to get compliance. If it goes to warrant, warrants aren't exactly popular with being served, regardless of where they are. They have the right of appeal. They can appeal to the Housing Court of Appeals. They can appeal through Dauphin County. So success for us is a little difficult to achieve, and a lot of times it's not just right around the corner or just down the road. Sometimes it's a little bit further down the road. And that's why I know I get as frustrated as everybody else. I mean, I live here just as all of you do. I pay my taxes every year just like all you do. And I have the same type of frustrations, with trying to get compliance, because one of the things that people constantly say is, Codes is not doing anything. Codes is not doing their job. But in fact, this is our power. This is the only power that we have, is the power of the pen. We don't have the power to physically bring anybody back or physically do anything. It's the power of the pen. And that's consistent with anyone in the state or the nation. You only have the power of the pen to issue notices, orders, and citations. Now, we do have additional resources that we try and use. We use work release. Actually, community cleanups. I have actually done a lot of cleanups, on my own. A couple of friends of mine, we go out and clean up a lot, or sometimes, there was some elderly that I would take care of in the city, and it kind of feel good, doing that every once in a while, because at least there you can see what you did. At the end of the day, you can see what, your accomplishment. But we do try and capitalize on as many other resources as we possibly can, but we are trying to do our job the best we can. We do have the highest number of codes enforcement officers in probably 10, 11 years. I had 12 codes officers when I started in 1995, and slowly that kind of hemorrhaged, personnel hemorrhage over the course of time, and brought us to a particular point where sometimes we don't even have 4 or 5 officers. But right now, with the officers we have, we've actually just switched from reaction to proaction. So now, not only are we addressing complaints, we'll go out to a complaint and do an entire block. And we still have 2 open codes officer positions, so I'll just sort of bring this out. If anybody knows anybody, we have 2 open codes officer positions. All they need is a basic fundamental knowledge of construction, a background in construction, and that's basically all they need. They don't need certifications. They don't need a wealth of other degrees or anything else to do it. So if you do know anyone, it is on the web, and they can contact our human resources. Some of the other things, I know a lot of you have seen open properties. Now with the open properties, when you see them, you email me. Call the police. If you see an open vacant property, that's something I deal with personally. We have a neighborhood mitigation team that deals with these. I'll go in with the police, and we clear the property, and then it's done. And generally, we can respond within 24 hours. And any time there's a delay in addressing some of these, is if there isn't a pre-existing order out or a condemnation or what have you. I've come across this before. If there isn't anything, any kind of an order, any kind of violation there that's already in play. I've had this happen before. You go out to a property and you seal it up. Next thing you know, you have a lawsuit because they damaged my window. So that's the only time there's kind of a delay in doing these. But when you do have anything like that, when you do see a vacant property that's open, you email me. It's dpatton@harrisburgpa.gov, and I will handle it. Some of the other issues that come across us are zoning issues. We don't handle zoning issues. We do, in part, deal with some of the zoning issues. We'll go in an investigative capacity, but that is solely through our planning department. He's skilled in the municipal planning code. It's a civil action. We do assist as much as we can. I know there's one of the big things right now are illegal rooming houses. They're popping up everywhere. And what's happening is we'll send out a notice, and then all of a sudden they'll clear it up, and then all of a sudden they're back again. And it's just a constant high level of recidivism in a lot of these properties, and we are dealing with it the best we can. But We have found a way to deal with it criminally as opposed to civilly, which it was several years ago. So we are handling it, but I have been in discussion with City Council on a higher level offense in dealing with some of the rooming houses, because I know everyone here, I can see some of your faces that you've seen properties being converted to rooming houses or have knowledge of rooming houses. The only what issue I would bring up is that we do get complaints of alleged rooming houses where they see a lot of people coming in and out. If it's an owner-occupied property, we have a little difficult time getting in, difficult time doing any kind of enforcement, unless it's coming from inside that particular property. If it's a rental property, that doesn't present a problem. We always have a way to get in if it's a rental property. But owner-occupied, it's a little bit more difficult to address properties constitutionally, just based on someone coming in. We will make inquiries, we will outreach, but we need prima facie evidence to try and bring a court and trying to shut them down. One of the other hot topics that comes up with us is bed bugs. We've actually just had our office in the last few months exterminated because somebody brought in bed bugs within our office. We had to evacuate. We do not go in any place with bed bugs. If any kind of alleged bed bugs, we will not enter the property. What we do, though, the person brings a sealed plastic envelope or brings a note from a doctor showing that they were bitten, because they can detect bed bug bites, then we will do everything from home base, and then we'll clear it once we get documentation from an exterminator. We actually have people coming in. We had a guy come in with bed bugs in an empty sneaker. Just brought him into our office. We had to quickly, politely, just move them out. But people do come in because they're on their person, they're parasites. And evidently, one person or other came in and the bed bug just dropped off of them, and it was just one of my administrative staff was just crawling up the partition. So we had to clear everything. Another one of the hot topics that comes across us is illegal dumping. We cannot handle illegal dumping because that's what some person is doing to another person's property. That is strictly a police matter. We will deal with it through the particular property owner where the dumping has occurred, and oftentimes they'll say, well, I didn't put it there. And the problem with illegal dumping is that we need that direct testimony. The police need direct testimony to enforce anything with illegal dumping. And that's where the problem arises, because people are a little fearful of consequences or repercussions, from alleged dumper when they have to go into court and give direct testimony. So a little reticent, about giving any kind of that kind of testimony. So that remains kind of a consistent problem with us. Pretty much hit a lot of the topics here. I wanted to move kind of quickly simply because, like I said, based on the indicators of last evening, there's always a lot of questions that come through. So I was hoping we could maybe address some of these other issues, as from your questions.
It's a suggestion. I mean, one of the things you pointed out is people make complaints that you can't handle.
Right.
If we had a way to file complaints online for only those things that can be handled by you, that'd make life a lot easier. I mean, just like Susan said, drop-down menu would be. So that's my one suggestion. Yeah. Okay. Is that in the works?
It is online. The application is online also.
The complaint?
Yeah, the complaint is
so
on.
We can file the complaint online now.
So right now, the way it's set up online is you can print off the form off online.
Right.
But City Council, we just actually we passed a resolution to work with this company. It's a form-based company, so we're looking to move forward within city administration, creating forms online where you can fill out forms online and submit it online. And one of those forms that we're looking at is for the closed department. So we literally just signed the resolution probably last meeting. So that is in the works.
That'd be great. All right, and my question then for you is, I think you said this, but if I have trash on my property or somebody has trash on their property, that's a violation for the property owner, right?
Yes. Okay. Yes. And the complaints, I just want to stress this, the complaint forms that we do, they are valuable. Simply because, it does have indications on there if you would appear in court, to provide testimony. In addition to that, it helps us in court. When I first started, we had 10,000 complaints in a year, 10,000. And most of these complaints were unjustified, bad locations, neighbor against neighbor, very popular. Always trying to draw us into particular neighborhood disputes. We're always getting drawn into this. So, with doing these complaints, people are a little less likely to sign their name to something if they know they're involving us, in such types of neighborhood dispute.
Yeah, I have a few questions. Number one, I have, how do we report employee misappropriation of work time on the clock? And then who would be your boss?
My boss is Chief Carter. Outside of that, be Human Resources.
Okay, and another question, how do residents get help when there's personal vendettas from code officers?
You can file with our Human Relations Commission.
What happens when that's filed and there's no response?
That's through the state.
So there's different avenues. So that's a little bit outside our code. I think that's more city administration. So if you're having any issue with any city employee, it's the executive branch. The person who sits above the executive branch is the mayor. If it's outside the executive branch, you have the legislative branch. So you can contact any member of city council. If you feel like your resolution is not being heard on a city level, you have different levels in the state. You have the Auditor General, you have the Attorney General's office. So even within your avenue, if you feel like you're not being fairly treated within the city organization, there's an outside organization who can look into any matter that you're discussing right now.
Appreciate that. Onto the dumping. When you state that that's a police matter, and when you contact the police and the police say it's a codes matter, and when you contact every means necessary, everybody within your own organization says that it's code's job to come out and file these complaints. So I mean, I hear that there's you guys saying that it's not your job, but everybody in the city is saying it's not their job, because I personally made complaints. I would like to go to court and even, testify to these things. I caught the people in the act, and it wasn't involving my property, but it was involving properties that I live right next to. And I reported it to the city, I reported it to city council, I reported it to the police, I reported it to codes. I mean, I don't know who more I can report it to for somebody to come out and actually start caring about the community and actually reporting these things, because nobody cares unless it's their pockets are hurt. If your pockets are hurt and you're given a violation or you're given a fine, they might think twice about doing it again.
I mean, if you've called the police, I'm sure you've had an incident report, and you can always follow through with an incident report. We don't do Title 18. Title 18 of the Pennsylvania Crimes Code. Illegal dumping is scattering rubbish under Title 18.
They wouldn't even respond. They wouldn't. They said that when I talked to the dispatcher, they said that's not even a police issue. Our police are too busy. We won't even take the report. Is exactly
what I would recommend in those type of situations. So as everyone know, I'll stand up. So everyone know our calls go to county dispatch. So anytime we call county dispatch in regards to police issues, it gets sent to our police officer. Now, one thing I would say is illegal dumping is a police matter, but let's just say county dispatch told you that. What I would recommend from there, if it's within the hours that the city is open, I will call 311. And once you reach 311, I would ask to talk to someone in the police department. And someone in the police department, whether it's the chief secretary or one of the command staff, can take your call and then address it from there, because that truly is a police matter. Now, from a code aspect of it, once the illegal dumping takes place, it's on that. So if someone illegally dumps on my property and I'm calling about illegal dumping, the only person a code officer can cite at that point is me for having the trash on my property, because the ordinance being property specific. So the realm of handling illegal dumping is a criminal matter. So we want to charge the person who actually did it. So that's why absolutely it's a police matter. And if dispatch is telling you that it's not, then my recommendation is to call 311 and talk to someone within that police department about handling that. If they feel like they're being dismissive from that angle, which I know they shouldn't be,
then you can contact, anyone on city council, or like I said, the executive branch of the mayor in the mayor's office, or you can go all the different mechanisms that I was saying before.
Another question. What do we do when we reportedly report properties and nothing's done about them and they're unsafe for our children that live directly, in the neighborhood, and even where they're directly next to a school, where buildings are falling down, where I've documented it and submitted it and nothing's done for a year at a time? What do you do then?
Well, we are constrained by the resources. This is the only power that we have. As far as anything that's sealed up, that needs sealed up, we do that, but we are very limited in our resources. Our demolition budget is very minuscule, so we can't, there's no mason jars, in the yard that they got money to do like, so we do everything we can. We've done, a tremendous amount of work in sealing the properties. I come in with the National Guard Counter Drug Unit, I work with them. I seal some up myself, and also have a neighborhood mitigation team seal.
So it's on record. 1817 or 1837, 1839 Rudy Road. They're in complete disarray. I did put a thing in, and I was out of line with my taxes, and I wasn't able to purchase the properties. But if I'm not able to purchase the properties, I would like to see them at least made safe, because that was my only intention in buying the properties, was to try to give these kids a little more confidence on their way to school, to say, hey, that we care, and that especially my biggest concern that I have is in the school. And I want to know who, if I make reports, you guys say top of the line is the mayor, and everybody's under him, which is fact. And I make reports repeatedly about a school that is literally unsafe, because I'm a professional. I'm an electrician, and when I walk in and I see criminal negligence concerning my kids going to a school where conditions are completely unsafe, where 23 out of 30 exit signs are hanging from the wires that support them, where the electric, magnetic stripes are ripped out the ground with exposed wires, where there's mold coming down, and where they patch it and can't even patch it because there's leaks, where the HVAC is not even on and doesn't even run, where the kids are being put out in the hallway, my son being put out in the hallway because there's no air conditioning in the room, and then they turn around and put them out in the hallway, and then if they're bad, they put them back in the torture box, the sweat box. I mean, I have problems with this, especially when I report these things and nothing's done for a whole school year.
Hello, sir. We appreciate your question, but that question is more directed with the Harrisburg School District. It is not directly involved with codes. And in order to be fair with everyone else, and that's here, a lot of people have questions. We gave you an opportunity to ask a lot of questions.
I pay $10,000 a year. I still have a couple more questions.
Sir, sir, a lot of people pay tax. Everyone in here is a taxpayer. If you have additional questions, you can submit them in writing, or wait till other people have an opportunity to ask some questions. We give you a lot of leeway, and we're just trying to make sure that it's equitable here for everyone.
I have a couple more questions. I'll be short.
Sir, you can ask them after we have another opportunity to let some other people ask some questions.
I came here for one purpose. I feel like that you're specifically singling me out and not
sir,
allowing me to get the help I need.
Sir, one person asked a question.
Just document
number two.
Document
Sir, you have an opportunity to ask more questions later.
I appreciate you turning me down. I appreciate that. Where did they leave?
Well, he did ask a question I'm going to answer, because I thought it was very, very important, that something that he pointed out. So, 'cause I live right around the corner, so I know exactly what property he's talking about on Rudy Road. So we have what we know as a demolition list. We also have a list that are condemned properties. So there are certain properties in the city that are beyond repair, where it needs to be demoed, whether it's due to fire or other conditions where it's sat idle for a while, where it's starting to fall apart. So we have a great amount of properties that we kind of rank by public safety issues, as far as their conditions, and it kind of ranks in things happen in a year where we have to knock them down. And we also have a list of condemned properties. So condemned properties mean they may have been officially placarded, or you may see the Cs that they put on the city a long time ago, where it was unfit for human habitation. That does not necessarily mean that they're beyond repair. So that's the difference. So anytime you see those properties where it may be unoccupied or maybe an eyesore and it has those Cs, you can also contact the office to kind of see, where is it at? Is that something on the city's demo list? Is it a condemned list? If you see any of those properties open, it's an immediate public safety hazard, and that's what Dave was referring to with the Neighborhood Mitigation Fund. We will seal those properties, because if they're considered condemned, that means we already filed appropriate paperwork, so they can probably be sealed within that 24 hours. So I thought it was a very, very important part that he asked about that I want to make sure the public was aware of. Thank you.
Well, I'm just exhausted. That's too hard to follow. I'm not here to criticize nor condemn. Our neighborhood Square Watch group, you guys have got to know us. I think I come up on caller ID or whatever. I would ask that you think outside the box, okay? I'm very familiar with codes, very familiar with filling out the codes complaints. So there's an issue. The issue is, I will fill out a complaint. I may not know what the status is. Now, I applaud that we're going to work forward on that where we can track the status. But for the most part, previously we wouldn't hear anything. So I didn't know if my complaint was, oh, it's her, or it's active in the system. I also understand that your system is antiquated, and once the code guys are out there, do the reports paper-wise, because they don't have the ability to do them electronically yet, they have to be entered into a system. I submit to you that you have a wealth of resources, and those resources are the citizens of Harrisburg, the citizens who care, retired citizens. It's data entry. How hard is it? Well, could be, but it's not. Which, if you had volunteers, and that's what they'd be, and we will not be stepping on the union's toes at all, but that if you had a volunteer that came into the codes office, let's say every other day, and for 3 or 4 hours sat there and entered in the information that your code officers needed entered into the system, wouldn't that be wonderful?
Yeah, it's just that, and I'm not downplaying the idea. It's just that a lot of what we do, there's very personal information. That same particular tracking number, the social security numbers, date of births, because we always have to have that leads up toward the citation. So that's where it gets into very personal type of information. As if when you file or anybody files a complaint, they go nowhere in terms of, they don't go into that to the public. I absolutely keep them totally confidential. The only way they can be released is by subpoena.
Okay. Well, then you vet the person that volunteers. It's called personal bond or insuring, or they sign a statement. Because really, the people you have doing that are no different than the people that are in this room that could be doing it. Right? We're all public, we're all humans. They don't have superhuman thing. It's a condition of their employment. And what you would do would be make that volunteer fully vetted, some kind of condition, whatever, but it would help. It would help. We don't have a follow-up. Right now, you don't have a follow-up system for, I like to call them naughty list. You've been called and called and called about a property, you've gone out, the property manager has cleaned it up. Very next week, it looks just like it did before you were called out. So in order for me to get another response for that, I have to file another complaint. If you had a naughty list, you would say, I wonder how they're doing. Swing by, look at it, and say to yourself, well, that didn't work. They cleaned it up once, and 2 weeks later, it's bad. You don't have the code officers to do that. Correct?
Yeah, I mean, we have 1,800 complaints that we responded to just so far this year. We have 11,000 rental properties that we have to inspect. And I agree with you. We do get phone calls of people wanting an update on their complaint. And the 3 administrative staffs that I have that basically run the Bureau, they do respond. They have the access to give someone an update, and then they have the officer, and it gives whoever the complainant is, that officer's phone number, and forwards that to them so that they can at least give them a little bit, of an idea of where it is. Maybe it's in a citation, or maybe it's in a warrant. And I know that's the part that gets frustrating, is when there's so many different ways for people to get out of not doing what they're supposed to. And it's frustrating for us when people just ignore the violation, or they ignore the citation, just goes into warrant, and then it just sits there. The city had over $500,000 in warrants. They've gone stale since now because they were years ago, but it is frustrating. But, I agree with you. It'd be nice to have volunteers.
And it would, and you can, Dave. You can. You and the city can. You can do it. Think it, imagine it, you can do it. Whatever those little legal issues are that you want to get around, you have a lawyer on staff. Ask him. But you can do it, and you can do it to help you, to help your guys, ultimately to help the city. Everybody that's in here wants a clean city, because when you see trash, it invites crime. So just think about it, and I think it can work. I really do. I have faith. Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, good evening, Dave. Kevin Novinger. I live over here with my wife and my neighbors. Now, we're homeowners, and we do appreciate when we contact your office. And if you get phone calls from us, it's because you're pretty responsive, generally. Okay. So, we have some questions, though. And sometimes our questions are related to the dearth of information that we have about the properties that are around us. And we have a hard time, I search the county records. I try to find out who owns it, because if we can contact the owner of the property, if there's a property, deal with a renter in a property, we usually can resolve it by making contact because the landlord's not there. So where do you see us going with access to information?
You mean in terms of property ownership?
Yeah, property ownership right up front, so we know who registered, who's licensed to be renting, who was the legal boarding house.
We can't give property owner information simply because we're an enforcement bureau. That draws us into, anybody can call and say, who's this property owner? So we just direct them to county. And anybody can look on the county website and find ownership. If we're the mechanism and part and parcel to giving someone information and they do something, not that they're going to, but they do something, then we get wrapped into that. Into that liability aspect.
Are your concerns about liability, from reality or from vetting by the law bureau?
From just experience.
Well, you can see where that puts us, because, we go to the county records, and if it's a legitimate owner with an address and a name, they might be reachable, but often it's a P.O. box, it's out of town. There's no record of the property. Where can we reach me standing right here? If I wanted to know who the licensed property manager on a rental property across the street, aren't the rental licenses public knowledge?
And that doesn't present a problem.
And it should be, and it's one thing calling your bureau and asking your administrative staff to find that information. I really think it'd be of great value to get that up online. There's no reason in this day and age why any of this information is not accessible online.
Yeah, in fact, they have a landlord license, so that is public information, right. And that can be asked.
And does that? Do I have to call someone to get that information, or can I get it online right now?
I don't think it's online. It's actually through the mercantile office.
Okay.
But again.
Yeah. Perhaps a roadmap would help us find these things. We could do some of this help with the enforcement just by being good neighbors and good stewards and good members of our community.
I totally agree.
Yeah, and just another point of frustration. We had a conversation without talking in general terms, but the vacant property that's in our neighborhood that was placarded from April through the end of summer. I spoke to your office via email. You said, to the best of your knowledge, it was not fit for human habitation, and then it's suddenly over a weekend filled up with mattresses, and now has 6 unrelated adults living in who are not the owners of the property. And so how does a property go from being unfit for human habitation to filled up with unrelated individuals? And I haven't seen a sign going back up on it. I never got any closure with your office. And this property has been the bane of our existence. The people on Zarka Street, us, we've gone through all kinds of paramilitary drug strikes 10 years ago, to 10 cars with, at least 10 adults living in there, to 24/7 activity. So, make us feel good here. What can you tell me what's going on there without getting into any legal territory here?
As far as a placard, it's rare they actually stay up. Usually take them down all the time, and we're just not able to, unless we hear from you and know that it's all of a sudden reoccupied again. This happens consistently all the time.
Okay.
We'll placard the property, we'll tear down the placard, and then we'll
So
just
what's
put
your recourse? What's our recourse?
Actually, it just falls back on us to issue citations against
And
individuals.
so they've been in there almost a month now, so,
You're going to need to email me the exact address.
okay, all right, I will. And I was at a meeting we had a meeting up on 29th Street, and someone associated or candidate for district justice said that some of these things we can take direct civil action in district justice court for properties that are impacting us, or we see that there's financial damage to go civilly against individuals. I mean, have you had any firsthand experience with that?
No, I know. I haven't seen anyone that's tried it. I know it has existed, and I think, when I was out in the Midwest, someone tried, because it caused an impact on the property values. I don't recall how successful that was. No one has tried it here. Not that it can't be done. Not too many people promoted civil actions. Usually it always falls on us. That's why I always encourage someone, if they're going to file something civil, we'll still do the criminal aspect of it, because this helps that and that helps this. And we can always provide the necessary records that helps your cause, for any kind of civil action. And then your civil action actually helps our criminal action. So they both kind of work hand in hand.
I just say, just following up on what Jane said, this is the company town of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. A lot of skilled people who are either retired or still active, who can volunteer and do stuff, who manage complex systems and deal with things like this every day. So, I wish, there's some way that, there's a level of frustration that some of us had. We sit here, we see needs in this city occurring. We see maintenance popping up right and left, where sometimes it seems to us that the issues are blind to the people who can immediately touch this, touch the levers. And so, that's what we're getting at, that we want to see more response. We want to see things occurring, a trigger happening, a light going off in someone's head when they see an example. You broke the idea of like open property, okay? Now, I'm not the only person in the city of Harrisburg that walks by 1214 Market Street, which is a condemned property, which I think gets around your problem with 24-hour notice. You can nail that right as soon as that's open, right?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So I'm not like the only person who walks by there, yet I'm sure police maybe drive a car, I could look down, I don't know who looks or what, but these things are hanging open, and this is a drug den where people crawl in and out there all nights, and I see their needles, and I see these are things that I see cross, two levels, the public safety right away, it's beautiful architecture that could burn down when someone falls asleep with a lit cigarette, passes out after whatever. So you're saying if I see something like that, it's a condemned property, it's open, it's right on one of the main thoroughfares of the city, your office can respond to it and deal with
Send
it?
that to me directly.
Yes, all right.
Yes, directly.
All right, thank
I'm
you.
the only one that handles those, simply because when I deal with those with police, I don't allow any of the officers to deal with those, simply because with the current trend of fentanyl,
Right.
some of the properties, once you get in or near those properties, because of the way it's utilized, a simple grain on the floor gets kicked up, it goes in
Right.
to your nasal cavity. So anything like that, I deal with police, and they've been absolutely tremendous, in response time. We've unfortunately had to, but we had like 4 properties in a row on Harrisburg Street that we just had to deal with just a few weeks ago, and turned into a bad situation. Needles and someone OD'd, and it's a bad problem.
Yeah, my mistake recently was, I called the police, not an emergency number, but I thought it was a public safety issue when, there were 3 properties in a row that had been torn open. I walk every day, so I see this stuff, and I thought that, it's a public safety issue.
Sometimes they will send, and a lot of times they do send me these once a citizen calls them, but it's going through them to me, so if it is open, I would encourage anyone, if you see them, just email me directly, and then I would deal with it. And like I say, most times I can handle it within 24 hours.
And just one other thing, just a point of clarification, just because it's not 100% clear, or I didn't get the sense it was coming through clearly. If there's a vacant lot sitting right there, it's gathering, continuing, tires, mattresses, and the whole bit. I can look up who owns that property. I mean, that owner, absentee owner, he's in Pembroke, he's got a property here, it's filling up with trash. You would cite him.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And simple as that. And then
It wouldn't be a notification because there is an ordinance out because of an instant citation, so we have to go through that initial notification. If anything's egregious, then we could simply issue citation right away. It's the same thing with high grass and weeds. If it's over 18 inches, we can administer an initial instant citation.
Now I have neighbors who, whether they would testify if we did a citation. I don't understand the loop how it comes around. Because if we cite that guy who lives, is in Pembroke, a business in Pembroke, who owns his property, it's full of stuff, it's tracking more stuff constantly. If you cite him, his response is he'll have to clean it up. It's on him. It's his property. He should be watching, right?
And if it is tires,
Yeah.
then what I've done before is notify DEP as well, because the water fills up in the wells,
Yeah.
and then it becomes an issue with West Nile, and so
We've died with mosquitoes
we've
this
actually
year.
worked hand in hand with, actually just most recently, a situation in South 18th.
All right, I'm just going to let someone
That's
add-
it. Yeah,
That's
that's
the question.
it.
I'm gonna point out two things that I thought were important about the questions he asked. One of the questions he asked had to deal with more of the technology aspect of it. So that question came up a lot at the forum yesterday, and I know through conversations with the mayor directly after the meeting, we're looking at different, open forums way where we can provide more information to the public as far as even, whether it's tracking a complaint. Some cities do a little bit more inside their GIS mapping of things. You being able to point out, blighted properties, condemned properties, knowing what kind of have an idea when it may be demolished by. So more access to public information. So it's not a constant phone call. It kind of takes some of the burden off the department, gives more public transparency. So that's the direction we're trying to move forward to. The second part about it, he mentioned something about when he was walking and he saw the incident, and then he called a non-emergency police number. So that non-emergency police number, and I think we talked about it at the last meeting, as I said before, it goes to Dauphin County Dispatch. So Dauphin County Dispatch dispatches police calls. So a lot of times they're not internal into our police department. So depending on who picks up the phone, they may say, this is not a police matter, this is a code matter. So my recommendation, if you guys see anything about open properties, one of the quickest number you can call inside the city is 311. Once you call 311, you ask for the person you want to talk to, whether that's Dave Patton or the codes department, and that's how you can kind of directly make sure that your complaints are being assigned to the right department. And that person answering 311 is not going to say it's not our issue, because that is the city's number. I think the last part you said too about the illegal dumping, which was interesting, was you said something about once whoever owns that empty lot, it's as easy as citing. It is easy to write a citation, but the likelihood of that owner whether he may be in Arkansas, Panama, Mexico, of taking care of it may be the next issue. Now we do, we work together with our community partners, with our public works department about clearing these empty lots. So I don't want to give a lot of times, I don't want to give the false pretense of once Dave's department files that citation, that something's going to happen. He did his part about, the power to pen of writing that citation, of trying to hold that property owner accountable. And some property owners will take the responsibility of cleaning their lots, but sometimes we may have to take further steps as a city or as a community with our partners to remove the issues that are there. Those are the three things I want to point out. But we have some people behind you, so let them answer the questions. Thank you.
Could you spend 2 or 3 minutes and, you've got a good group of people. What would you like us to do? That's my question.
What would I like you to do?
Yeah, what can we do?
Actually, just continue to be vigilant. I mean, we do want to know everything that's going on, your eyes and ears and everything in the community. And responding and complaining to us, that's what we do. We take the complaints. That is our job.
Yeah, we probably know, we know this better as well as anybody, I'm sure most of the people in here believe that you don't have enough staff, and we sure believe that there's not enough police officers. We're not mad at the code officers. We're not mad at the police. They're outnumbered. So that's what I mean. What can we do? Anything we can do, that's what, I'm sure that's what
No,
we're doing.
I understand, and I think continue to be vigilant. Like I say, we're at the highest staff number we have been in probably over 10 years, and we're trying to hire 2 more. So we're pretty much back to where we were in 1995. And I mean, that's just fantastic, because I mean, we're not just dealing with the public complaints that are coming in, we're actually proactively going out and do this. So we want you to file the complaints. That is what our job is, just to continue to be vigilant and just send us the complaints.
Ron Johnson, I'm trying to be reasonable because those are my neighbors, and I've been their chair for the last decade. So we've been active, and our issue is our property values are decreasing. And what they don't tell you is if they board them houses up around your properties, $5,000 automatically comes off of your properties. So, you know, what we've been doing is trying to clean up the houses that are vacant and plant flowers, make them look like they lived in, so that our property value doesn't steadily plummet down faster than it's already plummeted down because of these vacant investment property owners who are absent. And they're not, you know, some of them purchase these properties and don't even do anything with it. Like we have one at the bottom of 800 block of Zarka Street, and I send pictures along with my post forms when I fill out the post forms. So, and I have no complaints about the code officers because I always stay in contact with Dave and stuff. So there's a lot that we can do, but we need to be able to get in with these property investment owners and at least talk to them because they don't have no real ties to our community. And our property value, some of these people work hard all their lives just to maintain their properties, pay their taxes, just want to live in a clean, quiet, safe community, and it's becoming harder and harder. And we feel like we're being left out. And I try not to say nothing, but as I said, I heard my neighbors keep getting up there and saying, we want to be a part of, we want to be a part of what we've been wanting to be a part of for over a decade. And we partnered up with the city, and now it seems like we're being overlooked. So it needs to be said, and I will always say it, and I will always be at this public forum. Thank you.
Hi, on a different topic tonight. I'd like to know, to get a building permit, what amount is it, what is it, what amount, if you're like spending $100 to put something on your porch, do you have to get a building permit for that?
If it's under $1,000, and it's non-structural, no, you don't need a building permit.
Okay.
I mean, if it's structural in nature, and it's regardless of what the amount is. But something like you're just doing some minor repairs in a porch, no, there's no permit required for anything like that.
Thank you.
I mean, you could file one. I mean, we could use the revenue. I mean, just.
I just want a clarification. So, if you have owners who are in fact have junk all on their porches in the front of a property, that's not you. Is
Yes,
that correct?
if it's on
Oh,
their,
it is you?
Yes, if it's on their porch, if there's junk, that is definitely us.
Yeah, and I guess junk is in the eyes of the beholder,
That is
right?
definitely us.
But if we take pictures and send it to you, you'll determine whether or not you think it's junk.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, and then so there's no self-help. I think Cornelius was basically saying, okay, after you write it up and they don't do anything, what are you saying? You're going to have another meeting to talk about how you make things happen, or?
You're saying, so the process is, what I said that before was when the department writes a citation, so
Right.
soon as they write the citation, goes to the judge, they issue the fine, it gets mailed to the owner. Once the owner has a decision to do two things, they can appeal the citation or they can pay the citation, and the third thing is to take care of it and pay the citation. Some people would pay the citation, may not do anything. Some people may not pay the citation, they may not do anything. Some person may say, hey, I want to go appear in front of a judge and then kind of maybe get some more time or go the district justice route. So there are incidents where
our codes department, they write a citation and the owner decides not to do anything with it. They may say to themselves, you know, I'm in, you know, sometimes, you know, you don't even have to be in Arizona. Some people live right here in Harrisburg, you know, where they make the decision and say, I'm not going to do anything. You can cite me forever amount you want, I'm not going to do anything. And then those citations turn into warrants. Now the next step is, like they alluded to, there's a lot of outstanding warrants just based upon code violations alone of people not paying their citations through the district justice. So, you know, if problem arises where as far as where it's like a junk or illegal trash that's there, then rather than, you know, waiting for this person to get arrested or something happen, then, you know, the city look at different mechanisms as far as, you know, taking the cleaning up themselves, or we look through our community partners like Tri-Community Action. They participate in a lot of community cleanups where, you know, there's absentee landlords who are not doing anything. So, you know, different organizations kind of take care of it because it helps, you know, move the community along.
But if the property owner lives there and doesn't do anything, you don't touch it, is that?
You're saying it's a property owner living inside that house. So it's the same route. The property owner living inside that house, and you're citing them, and they're not taking any steps either to do anything about it,
Right.
or go to district justice. Those citations turn into warrants.
Okay.
Now, the one good thing with that is, with our housing court, they have their own constables, and they have, and that would be a good one, because they do serve the warrants in the city. It's always been a difficult time getting constables to serve warrants, because we're not permitted by law to give them driver's license information. It's under the vehicle code. But, you know, through their district justice, our housing court, they've just been working famously. They have their own constables, and they have been going out and actively serving warrants. So it's a really
So it's still,
better
it has to
process.
go through that judicial process. I mean, there's no, if they don't respond, particularly if they're the owners living in the property and they just junk it up.
Absolutely. As soon as that notification goes out and they fail to comply, the next step is the judicial process.
And that's it, we can't do anything.
But continue to follow that. We can continue. I mean, you know, we can continue to cite it, you know, to show that we're kind of push the issue. But all those citations still go through the judicial process.
Did the citations on properties that are occupied like that, do they ever get posted on the property itself?
No.
Okay.
Everything gets filed, it goes to the record center, it goes direct to the district justice. It's just like a traffic ticket. They get sent in the mail and they have 10 days to enter a plea, guilty or not. They'll put the fine on there. We do recommended fines, and they usually adhere to our recommendations. So that's the path that it travels.
Okay, so I'm gonna tell you, I lived in New York for 30 years, and I'm a self-help person, you know. I'll go and bag up people's stuff and throw it in the trash in a hot minute. But I just wanted to know, how far we're allowed to go without somebody. They don't complain. Okay, I'll tell you that. Thank you.
Is there any more questions? I mean, we're going to have more meetings and stuff, you know, but I want to make sure that no one's holding on anything that they, you know, right now. I don't want to say. Yeah, anyone, this is an open floor.
Meet with property investors and actually holding meetings with property investors. Yeah, when are you guys going to hold a meeting to try to work with property investors who have made an investment in this city and are not getting cooperation by the related properties? It affects our insurance. When are you guys going to have a meeting with the investors that are taking care of their properties and doing what they're supposed to be doing? We are being affected more so than any of the other property investors in the area. We have more than just the residents do. A lot of us have additional properties, and we're dealing with belated properties, people dumping mattresses and everything else on our properties because they've got nowhere else to put the stuff, and the trash refuses to take it. I mean, there's belated properties all over the place. I believe the city of Harrisburg is probably the largest owner of belated properties in the city of Harrisburg. I think it's probably around 800, 850 properties the city owns. Is that accurate? It's a significant amount, yeah. There's very, very few. I mean, when you have a large portion of property investors that are willing to take care of their properties, like we're taking a bath. We can't rent our units out. People aren't paying their rent. Like literally, it's insane to try to do business. Now, I know nobody cares that we chose to invest in the city. I've been invested in the city of Harrisburg for over 30 years. So this wasn't a short-term thing for me. I've been here longer than a lot of the residents have been. It was a serious thing that we took for investment. I've been in the contracting program. A lot of these guys will tell you I've dealt with almost every one of these guys in here, that we took it seriously. And I think that it's time that we get the investors involved, and instead of the city working against the investors, they work with the investors.
I guess my question would be, just to be more, I'm a real specific person. So what aspect do you feel the city is not working with it? Just to put it out there. So just for my knowledge.
At this point, I believe the investors are being targeted. Like literally, I personally, and I do a lot of codes, try to get people up to codes and try to get them in place. And one of the issues that we're dealing with right now is the licensing issue, because you have to have a license, which is fine, and then you got to register your properties. Well, we got one codes inspector that'll say you have to go to codes and list all your properties, but that's not true. The codes, the license at codes is only for occupied property, right?
No. Actually, if you look through the ordinance, if the property is vacant, still able to rent, it still comes under the ordinance as requiring registration.
Okay, well, if there's no intent to rent it, what's the interpretation? If it's meant to be a flip or to be sold, what's the interpretation?
Have you found with the Bureau, with the zoning?
That's not me personally.
No, I'm just saying, if someone's going to sell it, they have to actively do something with the intent to sell, which means any kind of property that changes ownership, they have to file for a zoning certificate.
Right, we know all that.
Right, and if that's on there, as long as that property's not occupied, because we can always check with Capital Region to see if water's being drawn. So we can always follow up on it, and no, not that anybody's going to lie to us, but we do get that on a lot of occasions. Well, it's not being rented. Then all of a sudden, 3 weeks later, there's somebody on the property, and that's in fact we hear that pretty much all the
And
time.
I get that. And now I do know stuff like that does happen, and that goes on the landlords. But the reality of it is working with the landlords, especially the ones that are above board, would be way better than targeting all the landlords for whatever else. I mean, we pay higher trash, we pay higher water, we pay all kinds of licensing fees that nobody pays. They're driving around giving citations for people parking in their yards. You can't park on the streets around here. Do you know what I witnessed before I come over here today? I sat where I sit every day on Vernon Street to keep the drug dealers away from my property. I witnessed a kid walk down the street, turn around with a gun, 6 shots across the street, 6 shots directly across the street, and take off running. 3 or 4 of them took off running. Like, when you've got stuff like this going on, like, that puts our life in danger. I mean, I have permits pooled for jobs and everything else. I mean, like, literally, we're doing what we can to try to make the city better. And what brings that is the blighted properties and obviously the areas where they're allowed to run to and everything else. I mean, that's what's going to bring that trouble. So the reality of it is, I think, instead of everybody trying to figure out how they can make more money for the city, is let's all work together, bring up property values in the city of Harrisburg so they can get the taxing revenue and fill these properties up with people. That would be the ideal thing. I proposed an educational program to try to train kids how to do trades, and nobody even wanted to hear it. It fell on deaf ears. Deaf ears. And if any of you guys know, if there's anybody qualified to put projects together and train kids on the street that are just running around how to do trades, it's me. And it's a sincere effort. It changes properties, it changes neighborhoods, it does all that. In my opinion, it's far past time that we stop and just everybody get together and make it a community effort instead of just targeting to try to make money off the landlords to try to get somehow or another to keep things going.
Thank you, sir. And I would say, as far as your proposal, I don't think it fell on any of our current ears of people who are on city council right now. So I know myself and probably Westburn would be interested to hear, because there's a lot of other people with that same initiative. So kind of helping, working collaboratively to get that done, I think that would be a good thing. Does anyone else have any more questions? Feel free. We have time. So I want to feel like I'm pushing this along.
I want to support what you said. It's bad enough for the residents, but you understand, I want you to really hear what you're saying. When you enforce only against the people who talk to you, and don't enforce against the people who aren't talking to you, you know, they feel like they're getting picked on lightly, you know? And so, again, we have to come up with some answer as to what to do with the people who aren't responsible. Some answer. Yeah, I mean, that's what he's saying. And, you know, meet, I mean, there can't be more than 10, I don't know, maybe there are. Maybe there's 20 good landlords in this city who own a lot of properties in Manitowoc, but they're working with you. You know, and that's what they're saying.
Thank you.
Excuse me, I just have one more thing. What happened to city trash cans? Oh my gosh, the mayor's here. We used to have trash cans in the neighborhood, and then and now we don't. And so therefore, between every, I guess I like to call them bodegas, but they're little corner pharmacy units, little stores, trash is on there. But I think it would help if we had the trash cans again. So just an idea. You know, just throwing something up here. Okay, good.
Any other comments? Sure? Sure? It's like church, you know. I'm not going to close the pulpit up yet.
It's on Mall Road. It's actually right beside the prison, the Judicial Center. As you go past the prison, it's the building closest to, I forget what that road is, but it's called the Judicial Center. It's on the other side of the Dalton County Prison. Yeah. What is it? 451 Mall Road.
All right, so you have a question? Go ahead.
Okay, I'm back. Thank you. I know this is not an I'm finding outside a code situation unless it's something wrong with the structure itself. But I don't know how many other citizens have witnessed these drug and alcohol halfway houses popping up throughout the city.
Yes.
It's a big problem. And like I said, I'm not finding out it's not, if it has to do with the structure, then it's building and housing. So is it possible that building and housing can have meetings like this? Please?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to speak for anyone, but I think what we're trying to do is, I know I'm having this conversation with a lot of different other of my council members, is to encourage more either community district type of meetings where, you know, rather than waiting for, you know, big things to happen or, you know, controversial legislation, that we really start to have these conversations within the neighborhoods, within the districts, so you guys can have a periodic time to ask these type of questions, whether that has to do with housing, whether that has to do with crime, whether that has to do with blight, because what we realize is, you know, when we're down in our meetings, and you're down there too, only like 2 or 3 people inside the crowd, and usually when we're out in the community, we're getting more of a turnout, and we get more information to kind of take back to kind of get things done. I know when it comes to rooming houses, or it comes to these drug and alcohol houses, you know, a lot of things, you know, happen and pop up, and people don't know what to do. So I think not only on the case of, you know, having the housing meeting, but having representatives that represent police, crime, whatever it may be, public works, to kind of bring those different avenues. So within your neighborhood, within your district, you're able to have access to people and get to ask the appropriate questions. But always feel free. What I want to say is, to not wait for the meeting. If you have questions, the city is open Monday through Friday. We have this 311 system to call in and ask for the person you need to talk to. That person is not giving you the answer that you need or unavailable. Mayor's office, he's right here. I put him on the spot. His office, if he's not able to resolve your issue or you feel like you want to talk to a party outside the executive branch, there's 7 council members that you can reach, and we can, try to, get accountability to make sure your concerns and your issues are being heard and being addressed.
Well, say for instance, it popped up on 17th and Bow Street, the structure. It is a drug and alcohol halfway house. Everybody thought it was going to be a nice house, apartment, for people to live in. And then after everything was completed, then you find out that's what it is. Like they've come in under the radar. So when Codes does, I guess Codes doesn't have to ask what it's being used for.
So I guess you're talking about the nice one that's like the...
Right across from Harris Andy Zion Church, yes.
So what happens is, a lot of times, I'm speaking as like a member of the community right now, is people are following the process, but we don't know the process. So the lack of information of us knowing the process of when those little signs go up and have little orange things slated for them zoning meetings that we don't know anything about. And so we usually find out, what I realize, being on council now, members of the community are really not finding out about the process at the very, very last step where it went through the planning commission, it went through the zoning commission, it's coming before council for that final vote, and someone was caught inside the paper and say, hey, this is going on. So this is why I think it's important to kind of, for us as council, and I'm speaking for myself and a couple other of my members, is to really make sure that we are kind of engaging the community to help you guys, kind of mobilize to be able to pay attention to what's going on inside your neighborhood. So you guys can ask these questions. Sometimes these signs and things pop up, and you guys don't know, what it is or what it has to do with it. But if we're providing an avenue and the mechanism where you can, to get these answers, I think that's important. And I also think it's important to kind of also, talk amongst yourselves as neighbors. One of the first things I said when we got here is make sure you introduce yourself to someone else, because that next door neighbor may have saw something but didn't know the people down the street and didn't say anything. So a lot of people are going through the appropriate government process, but because we within our community are not really exposed to, or unless we've been through that process ourselves, know what's going on, we don't find out about it till it's too late.
Well, let me say this. When I found out that the property next to me was sold, I came home for lunch one day and I saw somebody in there, and it was a couple. Because I lived there for 59 years, I went to the front door. I knocked on the door, I introduced myself, and I explained to them that we had a very nice neighborhood, and do you plan to live here? Yes, I got nosy. Do you plan to live here? Are you renting it out, or what are you doing? Well, we are, we're going to rent it out. I said, well, we don't have any drama in our neighborhood. I said, we're very quiet. You can hear a pin drop. Everybody looks out for each other. Lo and behold, what do we have? A drug and alcohol halfway house. But of course, I was on top of it, as you know, and I'm going to stay on top of it. I'm just disgusted. I am. I just can't tell you. I know you're sick of seeing me, and you're just going to be sick of seeing me because I'm going to keep doing it because I worked my whole life, and I'm not going to be living next to a bunch of rehab people with ankle bracelets on and all this other stuff, and cussing and carrying on. I don't do that on a Sunday morning. F this and F that. I don't do that. And I'm not going to listen to it. It's got to go. I don't know who I have to see. Mayor, it's got to go.
Remember, zoning hearing board.
Yeah, I understand that, but it's got to go.
Okay.
You're the man at the top. It's got to go. Why, if you live in Mechanicsburg, why can't you put it next to your house in Mechanicsburg? Because Mechanicsburg won't allow it. That's why. And I'm not going to allow it. And I'm not scared. I'm not.
How does a property like that get through licensing? How does it become a licensed rental, boarding house, anything? How does it even happen?
If it's we look at the use. If it is a rental property, the subject property was alleged to be a conversion to something, we will do the evidence gathering. Our only way in is if they do have some type of license that warrants us to get in that property. And when we do get in, we'll do up some observations, we'll do some investigations, and anything that reveals itself to be something other than what it's supposed to be, we will send that information, that documentation over to the Planning Bureau, and they can take the appropriate action on it. We do look at all the uses. We've had stuff that might be an illegal daycare, it may not, so we just take that tidbit of information and put that within our investigation when we go in to just do a routine rental inspection. We'll make note of anything that reveals itself to be something other than what it's supposed to be.
Well, not to put you on the spot with your boss here and the council members here, but do you feel that there's a deficiency in the legislation that helps you do and the regulations that help you do the job? Because, you know, I mean, the drug and alcohol house pops up, it goes to the zoning hearing, and it gets passed, but then, you know, we do, I guess we have to, maybe as a community, we have to sort out and figure what the best and proper use of our housing stock in our neighborhoods is. And unfortunately, we become, you know, our neighborhoods become the dumping ground for the housing, for the deranged, the criminal, the parolees, the drug addicted, because no one else wants them. And, you know, I think it has to be fairly shared, and, you know, is a good business for the city in general to be in the business of attracting people who don't necessarily contribute incomes and a nice, sane community.
Well, I mean, one thing I can say is yeah, the law is weak when it comes to zoning, but it's state, it's the municipal planning code. You do need very clear, firm evidence to file that civil action, because I used to be in charge of zoning and planning many years ago, and it is very cumbersome. We do need that particular information to file. When it goes into the district justice court, you have to have them served by a constable. You get it's mandatory 30 days. It has to be 30 days. If they don't respond within 30 days to the notice, it's what's called unassailable, meaning they are guilty. They're absolutely guilty. They can't come in and say, oh, well, there's no excuse, they are guilty, and then it becomes like a 500-day fine. The problem becomes, you know, with that is if they don't respond to it at all, it's a civil judgment that just sits there. So that's why we try and work hand in hand with zoning for something we can do from a criminal aspect. If we do find something of an illegal nature going on, we try and attack it through whatever criminal mechanism that we have. The criminal is always the best way to go. The civil is weak. Again, that's something that's out of our control. But we do work hand in hand with them. Once we find that something might be an illegal conversion, a rooming house, or anything of that nature, we do try and work together with them.
Well, does the city have any recourse, you know, when to that egregious to, you know, like seize the property through eminent domain? Do we have that structural authority? Have we thought about it? I mean, is it on the table? Because, I mean, some people shouldn't justifiably be exploiting this community like they do.
Eminent domain is very difficult because, first of all, you got to take it through our reinvestment board. That's a long trajectory. You got to pay fair market value to that owner. You have to get it appraised. You got to pay for the appraisal. You have to do a title search. You got to pay fair market value to that. And then we have to use Cdbg funds to maintain that property for however long we have. That's some of the problem that happened, you know, many decades ago. There was just acquisition of properties that there really wasn't any kind of fruitful use for. And they were using our Cdbg funds, which is depriving me of demolition money and depriving housing of rehab money, because we have to take care of it. We got to mow the lawns. We got to shovel the sidewalks.
Okay.
People dump on.
Definitely.
I mean, so that's one of the things we're looking at trying to do is divest some of these areas where we get them into the hands of an adjoining property owner. And I've been successful with that a few times. It is kind of cumbersome with title searches and everything else going through that. But yeah, it's a bit of a challenge, you know, and a costly one when we get into the main.
It's frustrating.
And I would say too, as far as the planning and the zoning meetings, these are not secret meetings. These are public meetings. And I have seen people go in with different type of ideas and proposals in the community, coming out,
showing up, saying their concerns with the plans, and those plans being shut down. So a lot of times, especially with our way our properties are set up, people may apply for these variances or special exceptions. So they're not allowed by right. So it takes petitions and things of that nature to get involved in those processes, attending those meetings and things that you don't want inside your neighborhood, that you think doesn't add value to your neighborhood, won't be there.
Yeah, the question I have is this form that you gave us for violations that are not enforceable by the Bureau of Codes Administration.
Yes.
Is it possible to send this information out with the water bills, like maybe 2 or 3 times a year? Because I think that the average citizen is probably not familiar with this information.
Actually, that was suggested last evening by Councilman Alana.
Yeah, and
I think it's a pretty good idea. I think it needs to be enhanced a little bit, as long as some of their stuff is more relative to how to fill out the form, but I think I could do a little bit better on that, maybe add a few other things.
And then the other question I have is, when you get a complaint on the Bureau of Codes forms, and it's not applicable to your department, and it pertains to the police department or one of the other departments that do you forward that information to that particular department, or do you send the individual who submitted the request the appropriate form to fill out?
What I do is, since some of the other departments don't have forms, I scan and then I send to the police department or our sanitation officer in public works for them to follow up on. In addition to that, I have what's called a complaint return document that I use as best as I can. So if there's a complaint, I have a form that I'll check off and I'll delineate in the form, where it needs to go or something like that, and then I've sent it to this particular entity. But yeah, and that's kind of what I do. I'm almost like a codes traffic cop because I get so many complaints, like say from all of the municipalities, and I have to document them. And I had someone again from Mahanoy City. She was complaining, she had horrendous conditions. I researched the web in Mahanoy City and got her the appropriate information so I could help her out. So yeah, it's.
But you don't know once you forward it on if it actually gets handled.
That I don't, and I think that's what the 311 system is.
Right. Okay, because I know some people get, they run some people back and forth from codes. They tell them one thing, you got to take that here or there, but it's not really helpful.
I'll make another comment about that. I'm going to tell you what I've heard over the years. We get child molesters applying for apartments. They have their records sealed. There's all kind of craziness that goes on. They'll approve anybody in the city of Harrisburg to get into a rental unit as a home plan. And the reason why I was told is because there's 27% of the population is already on probation or parole between county, state, and federal parole. That there's something like 627 officers within 5 miles of the city of Harrisburg, and that's the reason why they would prefer to parole people to the city for their home plans and prefer to have the halfway houses. That's what they tell me every single time. They get their record sealed. Fortunately, we've had some pretty crazy child molesters that their PO officers actually had contacted us personally and told us what they were actually in for, because there was absolutely no way for us to check because they sealed their records. So we have no idea what they're coming in our neighborhoods for.
Yeah, that's good information. And part of that too is one of the we talked about this at our city council meeting. And one thing that needs to happen amongst government is whether the transition. People have a right to transition home, but a lot of times when people are transitioning, they either get approved for places that are not approved for maybe a rooming house or a rental unit. So trying to figure out how can different government agencies work, where if people are transitioning home and have these different home plans, that are going to suitable locations that are approved to protect the neighborhood, and also that person who's transitioning back into society.
And also, I wanted to add what the gentleman said. is that there are schools and there are daycare centers, that there's a daycare center a half a block away from this place. And there's a school right down the street. So you've got all these people, different people in there that and you don't know who they are. Do they register with the sex registry?
That's under state law, Megan's law. So if you are a sex offender, you are required by law to give notification. And they're violating state law. I mean, that's one thing that I know is really, really stringent when it comes to Megan's law. When anytime you have some type of sex offender inside your neighborhood who is, you can look them up on the website. So even if you are able to see someone, and on the website tells them their address too. So it's as transparent as possible. Now, if you think there's someone who is registered as a sex offender, who's a sex offender who is not registered, first I would start requiring our local police department and getting in contact with our command staff, kind of get some information. But they're required under state law to be registered and their address to be listed.
But you know what they're doing? They are doing. They have contracts with companies that are drug and alcohol places that have social workers and all these other things. And I cannot remember, and I'm going to still look. It's C something something. There's 3 letters for the name of whatever it is, but this guy has contracted with this company. That's how he gets these people. And then there's one right up the block in 900 North 16th Street, which is Dr. Thaddeus Phillips' old dentist's office, that the cops are at all the time. All the time. And that's what's going on up there as well. They came in under the radar.
Okay, well, I think that you might be able to, as Councilman Johnson mentioned, folks have to register, and even if you do not know, if you know where they are living, then you can check the Megan's Law website to see if they are a registered sex offender, and your photo is going to be associated with that. In terms of folks that are going under the radar, as evident from tonight's meeting, and we're not wrapping up, I just wanted to make this statement. In yesterday's meeting, it's clear that we, as a council, may need to take a look at updating our codes. So this is something that we're definitely going to do is review the codes that are currently on the books, see what is in our power to update, and if it needs updating, we'll update it. But there are some things that are state law and federal law that do not come under our current purview. So we're going to do the best to update the city ordinances that we have, and we have an opportunity and a right to update to improve the living conditions in the city of Harrisburg.
That was going to be my question, because I know that the council had put certain safeguards in place for the residents and the kids, that these people couldn't be by the parks or the schools or places where...
That's state law. State law dictates all of that.
All of it.
Yeah, so cities and municipalities don't do anything with that. That's a serious state law that's in place.
Okay, so
the federal laws, whatever Megan's law falls.
But all of the police are going to do is to knock on the doors and make us aware of who's in the community. Because my problem is, on the corridor of the first block of South 19th Street is going straight down to all of the schools. There's Roman, there's Scott, there's Melrose, and it's a big issue. Because as a community leader, the first place you know about your community is the strengths and the weaknesses. And we know that there is a lack of parental supervision, especially early in the morning. So, and my other question is too, there's an apartment building on the first block of 19th Street, and it was supposed to be an apartment building, but what the guy did was he went down to CMU on Cameron and Sycamore and got some mental health patients, and he paired them up to an apartment. And so he's making about $7,000 to $8,000 a month. Now, I'm going to remind you, in 2016, one of the hottest summers of the year, that man laid in that apartment building dead for about a week. And now the drug activity is back. So, we do have issues. And we pay attention, and I'm not afraid to tell anybody. So I'm just putting it out there.
Any other questions? We'll still stick around. Our goal is to try to really funnel everyone out of here by 8 o'clock so we can keep our commitment to the Hamilton Health Center. First and foremost, I would like to thank the Hamilton Health Center. They have their representative here. If you guys can please give them a round of applause. did tremendous work for our community, as you can see on the wall, from 1969 to where they're at right now. This is really in the heart of Allison Hill, and we look forward to continue to work with Allison, with the Hamilton Health Center to have more of these type of meetings to keep everyone informed so everyone can ask their questions. Once again, thank you for coming out. If you have any sidebar questions, feel free to get in contact with us. We are having our next legislative meeting this Tuesday at 6 o'clock, so if you would like to attend. And also, just let everyone know, just as far as our meeting right now, what we did this year to kind of make it easier so people are not trying to track when we have meetings, we basically don't have meetings every Tuesday. Our first and third Tuesday is our workshop sessions where we look at our different bills that are being proposed, and we talk with the council, trying to figure out among the administration to work through those bills. The second and fourth Tuesday is our legislative meeting. There's maybe more discussion, but that's where all the voting takes place. All those meetings are open to the public. There's public comment at both of those meetings. So if you guys would like to take a venture downtown and be a part of that process as well, you're more than welcome. I also want to point out Ms. Nelva Wright. Is that her name? Right. Yeah. So Ms. Nelva Wright, she's also in the codes department. She's the health officer. So she takes care of like all your corner stores, your restaurants, anything that's required to have a health license inside the city of Harrisburg. She's that person in there making sure everything is safe. You can see her reports online. Sometimes you see them on Penn Live. So if you ever want to kind of know where to eat or know where it's in violation, you can check that out. But I would like to thank since this is our last meeting, thank the codes department for coming out and bringing this information out. It's something I don't think was ever done before, so we're trying to do new innovative things to kind of get that community engagement at a level where we have active participation from all neighborhoods, so everyone's issues can be heard and be addressed, and we can get things done here in the city of Harrisburg. So with that, I'd like to conclude the meeting. Let's have everyone have a nice, safe trip home. Thank you.
Thank you.